Praxis is the word I'm describing today. My name is Valentine Cadieux, and along with my friends and colleagues, Evan, Jennifer, Alex, and Renata, I've written a chapter called Navigating Urban Agroecology within the Social Sciences. And the concept of praxis is central to this, and we'd like to share it with you today. In the context of community organizing around food, the way I like to understand the idea of praxis is to think about it as action learning. We are likely to study things that we're motivated to protect or serve or repair or change in some way to be more in line with our goals. In a wonderful essay Sarah Wakefield wrote in the journal Antipode in 2007, she describes the food movement in the context of working toward a goal of food forever and food for all. And she describes praxis as giving life to ideas about the way the world is and could be by acting on one's theoretically informed convictions in daily life. We think that urban food cultivation provides good opportunities to consider this idea of practice, where we're theoretically informing ourselves by our observations of what's happening around us, where we're working to nourish soils to grow food, what we describe as participating actively in agroecologies or agricultural ecosystems. The people involved are both acting to transform a system they would like to bring more life to, and they're having to pay close attention to the context where they're growing food. Growing food in cities makes it almost impossible to ignore the social context as an important part of the ecosystem that allows us to grow food, something that does regularly happen when we romanticize agricultural ecosystems. But studying social conditions, for example, inequality in the context of growing food, tends to be very linked to the perspective of praxis, where people talk about the point being not just to understand the problems in the world, but to actively put that understanding into action to change the problems. In our chapter, we've used our research on urban agroecological land management and its potential benefits to cities and neighbors to advocate for structures, institutions, and other conditions that support urban agriculture, particularly through land access. In her essay, Sarah Wakefield talks about a few different kinds of praxis as starting points that we've found helpful, especially for people in learning institutions. From the inside of these cultural institutions, we can provoke people to critically reassess their taken for granted world or ideas about the world and to think about alternatives. From the outside, this may involve getting involved in political action or group work to transform society. Or it may involve bridging the relationship between what are often thought of as separate spheres, thinking about things and acting on them by helping to shape local policy, for example, an activity like many others that takes both critical thinking and acting. This also often involves transforming and rehabilitating existing institutions, especially in areas where they've been de-resourced and where there are defenses of a status quo that needs to be changed, like where policies defend legacies of urban planning that privilege single-family housing with a legacy of racially restrictive covenanting, as in our city in the Twin Cities in Minnesota, or where growing food in a city is considered too country, embedding biases about race, class, and gender into the policies that shape how cities are reproduced and maintained. Praxis also relates back to reflexivity, so see that entry in the glossary also. Reflexivity is part of the praxis process of action learning. We observe what's happening, we modify it to make it more the way we'd like it to be. We continue to observe it and to observe the impact of our behaviors and to consider how our practices in the world can lead toward these goals in an ongoing cycle. And it also relates back to reflexivity in the way that we counter the idea that the way we do geography in communities can ever be value neutral. We all have positions in the world. We're not objective, observing and implementing scientific truths. We're in relationship, and understanding the positions of our locations and our relationships helps us engage in praxis, this action learning, in a much more accountable and relational way.